The planet Zyraction 7 shimmered like a jewel in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, its skies painted with swirling hues of gold and violet. Towering crystal spires jutted out from the ground like frozen lightning bolts, reflecting light and dazzling. Patterns that could mesmerize anyone who dared to look too long. But beneath this breathtaking beauty lay an empire built on cold precision and ruthless efficiency. The domain of the Zyranthians were unlike any species humanity had ever encountered. Their bodies resembled sleek, segmented insects, their exoskeletons glinting with metallic sheens. They moved with calculated grace, every action measured and deliberate. Emotions were considered primitive to them, a relic of lesser beings unfit for survival in the harsh realities of space. And yet, despite their disdain for emotion, curiosity often gnawed at them when it came to humans, or the fragile ones, as the Zyranthians called them, had stumbled into the galactic stage only decades ago. With their fragile bodies, unpredictable behavior, and chaotic emotions, they seemed laughably ill-suited to the rigors of interstellar life. Yet somehow they persisted. Despite being dismissed by nearly every advanced civilization, humanity continued to carve out a place among the stars. Much to the confusion and growing irritation of the Zyranthian elite. At the heart of the empire stood Queen Vexarian, a towering figure whose presence commanded both awe and fear. Her voice carried the weight of centuries, her decisions shaping the fate of billions across countless worlds. She viewed humanity not as a threat but as an enigma, an irritating puzzle she couldn't quite solve. How could such frail creatures survive where stronger, more logical species had failed? It defied all reason, and Queen Vexarian loathed anything that challenged her perfect order. One day, while overseeing her court from her throne room, a cavernous hall filled with glowing, bioluminescent flora and hovering drones recording her every word, a messenger approached. The drone buzzed softly before projecting an image into the air above the queen's head. It showed a human outpost orbiting a nearby star, struggling against technical failures and dwindling resources. Humans scurried about like ants trying to hold together a crumbling nest. Queen Vexarian tilted her elongated head, mandibles clicking faintly as she observed the scene. Why do they cling so desperately to existence? She mused aloud, her tone dripping with disdain. Around her, advisors murmured agreement, offering theories rooted in logic and biology. Some suggested humans thrived because of sheer luck. Others believed it was their adaptability, however chaotic, that kept them alive. None of these explanations satisfied the queen. As if summoned by her thoughts, another report arrived. This one was different. A lone human vessel had drifted dangerously close to Zyraction 7's borders, its engines sputtering and failing. On board were two passengers, a young woman clutching a wailing infant and a damaged AI unit emitting erratic signals. The ship's distress call had been intercepted by Zyranthian patrols, who brought the craft down without hesitation. When the queen heard of this intrusion, something sparked within her, a flicker of intrigue she hadn't felt in cycles. She ordered the intruders brought before her immediately. As the guards escorted the trembling woman into the grand hall, Queen Vexarian leaned forward slightly, her multifaceted eyes narrowing. The human appeared weak, disheveled, and clearly terrified, but what caught the queen's attention most was the baby cradled in her arms. Its cries echoed through the chamber, piercing even the hum of the drones. "Silence your offspring," the queen commanded, her voice sharp and commanding. The woman swallowed hard, tears streaming down her face as she tried to soothe the child. But no matter what she did, the cries continued, echoing louder and more desperate, for reasons even she couldn't explain. The sound unsettled Vexarian. Logic dictated that she should dismiss the humans outright, perhaps exile them or study them briefly before discarding them. Instead, she found herself making an offer that would shock everyone present, including herself. "If you can stop your baby from crying," she said slowly, her words laced with both mockery and genuine curiosity, "I will marry you." The hall fell silent. Even the drones paused mid-hover, their lights dimming momentarily. A human woman blinked up at the queen, her expression shifting from terror to bewilderment. For a moment, time seemed to stand still, and then, amidst the stunned silence, the baby let out another ear-splitting wail, one that resonated not just in the throne room, but deep within the Queen's mind, planting the first seed of doubt about everything she thought she knew about strength, survival, and humanity itself. The throne room of Queen Vexarian buzzed with tension, the air thick with disbelief and unease. The Queen's advisors shifted uncomfortably, their exoskeletons clicking softly as they exchanged glances. Never in living memory had anyone heard the ruler of Zeraction 7 make such a bizarre proclamation, marrying a human. It was unheard of, almost sacrilegious to the rigid hierarchy of the Zarenthian Empire. The young woman, whose name was revealed to be Elena, stared at the Queen with wide, tear-filled eyes. Her baby continued to cry, its tiny fists waving frantically in the air. She clutched the child closer, her hands trembling not just from exhaustion but also from fear. What did this alien queen want from her? Was this some cruel joke, or worse, was it a trap? Elena took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She had always been resourceful, even during humanity's darkest hours. Whether it was fixing broken equipment aboard her colony ship or comforting frightened children during raids, she had learned to think on her feet. But nothing could have prepared her for this moment, a standoff with an alien monarch who seemed both amused and annoyed by her very existence. I don't understand," Elena finally stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why? Are you doing this?" Queen Vexarian tilted her head slightly, her multifaceted eyes gleaming like polished gemstones. "You humans claim your emotions give you strength," she said, her tone dripping with skepticism. "Prove it. Stop your offspring from crying, and perhaps I will reconsider my opinion of your species." Her words sent ripples through the gathered crowd of Zarenthian elites. Some muttered among themselves, questioning the Queen's judgment, while others watched Elena intently, eager to see how she would respond. To them, this was little more than entertainment, a display of human frailty that would reinforce their belief in humanity's insignificance, but Elena wasn't thinking about the aliens around her. Her focus was entirely on the squirming bundle in her arms. She knew her baby wasn't just crying because it was hungry or tired. Something deeper was wrong. Babies were sensitive creatures, especially to their surroundings. And here they were, stranded on an alien planet, surrounded by towering insectoids whose mere presence radiated menace. With shaking hands, Elena began to hum. It was a soft, gentle melody she used to sing back home when life felt overwhelming. The tune was simple, almost instinctual, yet it carried a warmth that transcended language and culture. Slowly, the baby's cries softened, replaced by sniffles and whimpers. Elena held the infant close, rocking gently as she whispered soothing words. "It's okay," she murmured, pressing a kiss to the baby's forehead. "We're safe now. Mama's here." For a brief moment, silence settled over the throne room. Even the drones hovering above seemed to pause, their lights dimming slightly. The Zarenthians exchanged confused looks, their rigid expressions faltering. They had never witnessed anything like this before, such tenderness, such raw emotion, displayed so openly. Queen Vexarian leaned forward slightly, her mandibles twitching. There was something unsettling about the scene unfolding before her. In all her years as ruler, she had prided herself on maintaining control, on eliminating chaos wherever it arose. Yet here was this fragile human woman, defying logic and order. Simply by caring for another being, before she could process her thoughts further, one of her advisors stepped forward, his voice sharp and disapproving. "Your Majesty, surely you cannot take this display seriously. Humans are incapable of true strength. This is merely manipulation, a trick designed to evoke sympathy." Elena flinched at the accusation, her cheeks flushing with anger. She might have been scared, but she wasn't about to let these aliens dismiss her humanity as some kind of ploy. Summoning every ounce of courage, she straightened her posture and met the advisor's gaze head-on. "If caring for someone you love is a trick," she said firmly, her voice stronger now, "then maybe we humans are better at surviving than you think." Her words hung in the air, echoing through the chamber. For the first time, the Zyrenthians seemed genuinely disturbed. Their society thrived on efficiency and detachment, viewing affection as a liability. Yet here was this human a creature they deemed weak, standing tall and unyielding, defending her values without hesitation. Queen Vexarian rose from her throne, her movements deliberate and calculated. She descended the steps until she stood only a few feet away from Elena, up close. The queen's imposing figure was even more intimidating, her towering height casting a shadow over the diminutive human. "You dare challenge us?" the queen asked, her voice low and dangerous. "No," Elena replied, meeting her gaze without flinching. "I'm showing you what makes us strong. You can mock us all you want, but our ability to care, that's what keeps us alive. That's what makes us human." The room fell silent. Once more, the weight of Elena's words sinking in. Queen Vexarian studied her closely, her expression unreadable. For the first time in centuries, doubt crept into her mind. Could there be truth in what this fragile human claimed? Could emotions truly be a source of power rather than weakness? As the baby finally quieted, drifting off to sleep in Elena's arms, the queen made a decision, one that would set the stage for everything to come. "Very well," she said, her voice carrying authority and intrigue. "You have earned my attention, human. Let us see if your so-called strength holds under greater scrutiny." With that, the guards escorted Elena out of the throne room, leaving behind a council of bewildered Zyrenthians and a queen whose worldview was beginning to crack ever so slightly. Elena was led to a chamber far removed from the grandeur of the throne room. Unlike the glittering spires and glowing flora that adorned Zeraction 7's public spaces, this room was stark and utilitarian, a cold, metallic cube with walls that hummed faintly as though alive. The air smelled sterile, almost clinical, and the only light came from strips embedded in the ceiling, casting harsh shadows across the floor. Two Zyrenthian guards stood silently by the door, their towering forms radiating an unspoken threat. Elena clutched her sleeping baby tightly, her heart pounding despite the child's newfound calm. She didn't know what awaited her next, but one thing was certain: Queen Vexarian wasn't done testing her. As if on cue, the wall opposite Elena shimmered and transformed into a screen. An image appeared, a sprawling alien landscape filled with jagged rocks and swirling red dust clouds. In the center of the scene stood a group of humanoid figures huddled together, their faces obscured by tattered cloaks. They looked exhausted, frightened, and utterly alone. "This is your first trial," came a voice from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was smooth and mechanical, yet unmistakably Vexarian's. "Your species claims unity and compassion as virtues. Prove it." Before Elena could respond, the screen zoomed in on the group. One figure stumbled, collapsing onto the ground. The others hesitated for a moment before continuing onward, leaving the fallen person behind. Elena gasped, instinctively stepping closer to the screen. "They left someone behind," she exclaimed, turning toward the guards as if expecting them to intervene. But they remained motionless, their expressionless faces betraying no emotion. "Why?" "Should they not?" Vexarian's voice replied coolly. "Survival requires sacrifice. Logic dictates that resources must be preserved for those most likely to endure." Elena shook her head vehemently. "That's wrong. You don't abandon people just because things get hard. That's not survival, that's cruelty." The queen's tone shifted slightly, curiosity creeping into her words. "And what would you do, human? Would you risk everything for one who might already be lost?" Without hesitation, Elena answered, "Yes, because even if there's just a tiny chance they can make it, you owe them that much. We're stronger when we stick together." For a moment, silence filled the chamber. Then the screen flickered again, and the scenario changed. This time, Elena found herself standing in the middle of the very same desolate landscape. Her surroundings felt startlingly real. The biting wind stung her cheeks, and the weight of the baby in her arms grounded her. Ahead she saw the same group trudging forward, oblivious to her presence. A small figure lay crumpled on the ground several yards away. It was a child, no older than 5, shivering violently and clutching a torn blanket around its shoulders. Elena didn't need to think twice. She adjusted the baby in her arms and hurried toward the child, ignoring the biting cold and the sinking feeling in her chest. When she reached the child, she knelt down and gently wrapped the blanket tighter around its frail body. "It's okay," she whispered, her voice soothing despite the chaos around them. "I've got you." But then another figure emerged from the distance, a Zaranthian soldier, its armored form looming over her. Its voice boomed through the simulation. "You waste your energy on the weak. Leave it and continue." Elena glared up at the alien, defiance burning in her eyes. "No, I won't leave anyone behind." The soldier raised a weapon, aiming it directly at her. For a split second, fear gripped her, but she refused to back down. Instead, she shielded the child with her own body, holding her baby close to her chest. If this was how the trial ended, so be it. She wouldn't compromise her values, not even for the sake of survival. To her surprise, the soldier lowered its weapon. The simulation dissolved, leaving Elena back in the metallic chamber. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her arms still protectively wrapped around the baby. She turned to the guards, expecting judgment or punishment, but instead, she heard Queen Vexarian's voice once more. "Interesting," the queen mused, her tone laced with something Elena couldn't quite place. Was it admiration, doubt, or simply intrigue? "You humans value loyalty above all else, even when it seems illogical. Tell me, why does such irrational behavior persist among your kind?" Elena swallowed hard, gathering her thoughts. Because sometimes logic isn't enough. Sometimes doing the right thing means putting others first, even if it's hard, even if it doesn't make sense. That's how we keep going, how we find hope in the darkest places. The queen was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a new edge, one of contemplation. "Hope," she repeated slowly, as if tasting the word for the first time. "A curious concept. Perhaps I underestimated your species." Her admission sent a ripple of unease through Elena. While it was clear the queen was beginning to see humanity in a different light, the trials were far from over. Whatever challenges lay ahead, Elena knew she would face them with the same determination and the same unwavering belief in the power of connection. As the guards escorted her to another chamber, Elena allowed herself a small smile. She had proven her point not just to the queen but to herself. Humanity's strength wasn't in its weapons or technology. It was in its ability to care, to fight for each other, and to hold on to hope even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Little did she know, the next trial would push her and the queen to question everything they thought they knew about strength, survival, and what it truly meant to be alive. The next chamber Elena entered was unlike anything she had seen before. It wasn't cold or sterile like the previous rooms. Instead, it felt alive, pulsating with strange energy that seemed to hum in rhythm with her heartbeat. The walls shimmered faintly, shifting colors as if they were breathing. In the center of the room stood a massive crystalline structure, its facets glowing softly with an inner light. Elena approached cautiously, her baby still cradled protectively in her arms. Before she could examine the crystal further, a voice echoed through the space, not Queen Vexarian's this time, but something deeper, older, almost otherworldly. "Welcome, human," it intoned, resonating through every fiber of her being. "This is the nexus of reflection. Here you will face your greatest trial yet." Elena froze, her instincts screaming at her to turn back. But there was nowhere to go. The chamber sealed itself behind her, leaving her trapped within the pulsating walls. She swallowed hard, clutching her baby closer. Whatever this nexus was, it didn't feel like part of the earlier tests. This was different, personal. Suddenly, images began to form around her, projected onto the shimmering walls. They weren't simulations like before. These were memories, her own memories. Scenes from her life unfolded before her eyes, her childhood. On Earth, playing in the fields with her siblings. Her first mission into space, filled with fear and wonder. And finally, the day she became a mother, holding her newborn for the very first time. But then the memories shifted. Instead of showing moments of joy, the walls reflected her darkest fears. She saw herself failing, unable to save those who depended on her colony ship crashing, leaving survivors stranded, her baby crying endlessly while she stood helpless, unable to comfort him. Each scene cut deeper than the last, forcing her to confront doubts she had buried deep inside. "You are weak," the voice declared, echoing through the chamber. "Your emotions cloud your judgment. Your attachments make you vulnerable." Elena staggered under the weight of the visions, tears streaming down her face. For a moment she believed the voice. What if it was right? What if all her efforts to care, to fight, to hold on were meaningless in the face of overwhelming odds? Then, amidst the chaos, she heard another sound, a soft cooing noise coming from the bundle in her arms. Her baby stirred, his tiny hand reaching out to touch her cheek. His wide, innocent eyes met hers, and in that instant everything changed. "No," Elena whispered, her voice trembling but firm. "I'm not weak. My emotions aren't a flaw, they're my strength. They remind me why I keep fighting, why I'll never give up." As if responding to her words, the glowing crystal in the center of the room flared brightly. The oppressive atmosphere lifted slightly, replaced by a gentler hum. The walls stopped projecting her memories and instead displayed scenes of humanity's resilience throughout history, explorers braving unknown lands, communities coming together after disasters, parents sacrificing everything for their children. These weren't just random images, they felt like echoes of what made humanity special. Queen Vixarian watched from her throne room, observing Elena's trial through a live feed transmitted by drones stationed throughout the Nexus. What she saw unsettled her. The human woman should have broken under the pressure, should have succumbed to despair. Yet here she was, standing tall despite the emotional onslaught, drawing strength from the very things Vixarian had dismissed as weaknesses. For centuries, the queen had ruled her empire with unwavering logic, believing that detachment was the key to survival. Emotions were messy, unpredictable, they led to mistakes, chaos, destruction. And yet, watching Elena now, she couldn't deny the power radiating from the human. There was something undeniable about the way she fought for connection, for hope, even when faced with impossible odds. Vixarian turned to her advisors, her mandibles clicking softly in thought. "Tell me," she said, her tone sharper than usual, "why does humanity thrive where others fail? Their bodies are fragile, their lifespans fleeting. By all accounts, they should have perished long ago." One advisor hesitated before replying, Perhaps it is their capacity for emotion that sustains them, their ability to find meaning in suffering, to unite in adversity." The queen's gaze hardened, though a flicker of doubt lingered in her multifaceted eyes. "Meaning," she repeated, slowly, testing the word. It was foreign to her, almost alien. Meaning wasn't something she understood or valued. Yet it clearly drove humans forward, giving them purpose even in the face of despair. Back in the Nexus, Elena faced one final challenge. The crystal pulsed again and the walls dissolved entirely, plunging her into darkness. A single question hung in the air, spoken by the same ancient voice. If given the choice between saving yourself or saving another, whom would you choose? Elena didn't hesitate. "Another," she said firmly, every time. Light flooded the chamber. Once more, revealing Queen Vixarian herself standing at the entrance. Her towering form loomed over Elena, but for the first time, there was no mockery in her gaze, only curiosity. "You would sacrifice yourself without hesitation?" the queen asked, her voice softer than Elena had ever heard it. "Yes," Elena replied, meeting the queen's gaze unflinchingly. "Because love isn't about keeping yourself safe. It's about making sure someone else has a chance to live." Vixarian studied her for a long moment, her mandibles twitching faintly. Then, without another word, she stepped aside, signaling that the trial was over. As Elena walked past her, the queen murmured quietly, "Perhaps emotions are not so easily dismissed." It was a small admission, barely audible, but it marked a turning point. For the first time, Queen Vixarian began to see humanity not as a nuisance, but as something extraordinary, something worth understanding. And for Elena, the battle was far from over. But she had planted a seed of doubt in the heart of the Zyranthian Empire, one that would grow into something greater than anyone could have imagined. The trials had taken their toll on Elena, but she refused to let exhaustion or fear show. Each step forward only deepened her resolve. She had proven time and again that humanity's strength didn't lie in brute force or cold logic, it lay in connection, compassion, and the unshakable will to protect what mattered most. Yet as she stood before Queen Vixarion once more, the stakes felt higher than ever. This time, the setting was not a sterile chamber or an alien simulation. Instead, they were aboard the Queen's flagship, a massive vessel orbiting Ziraction 7. The observation deck stretched endlessly around them, its transparent walls offering a breathtaking view of the planet below. Swirling storms danced across the surface, painting the sky with streaks of gold and crimson. It was beautiful and ominous. Queen Vixarion paced slowly, her movements deliberate and measured. Her advisors hovered nearby, whispering among themselves about the human who had somehow captured the Queen's attention. For centuries, no one had dared challenge the Queen's beliefs, not even within her own court. And yet here was Elena, a fragile creature from a supposedly inferior species, forcing her to reconsider everything she thought she knew. "You have passed each test," Vixarion began, her voice echoing through the vast space. "But there is one final challenge, one that will determine whether your so-called strength is enough to sway me." Elena straightened her posture, clutching her baby closer. Despite her weariness, she met the Queen's gaze without flinching. "What do you want from me now?" she asked, her tone steady despite the knot of tension in her stomach. Vixarion gestured toward the viewport, where a fleet of Zyranthian warships loomed ominously against the backdrop of stars. "My empire faces a threat unlike any we have encountered before," she explained. "A rogue faction of our kind, the Ashari, seeks to overthrow my rule and plunge the galaxy into chaos. They believe emotions are a disease that must be eradicated, and they see humanity as proof of this corruption." Elena's breath caught in her throat. She had always known the Zyranthians viewed humans as lesser beings, but she hadn't realized how dangerous their disdain could become. If the Ashari succeeded in their rebellion, humanity would likely be wiped out alongside countless other species deemed emotionally compromised. "The Ashari grow stronger by the cycle," Vixarion continued, her mandibles clicking faintly. "They attack without mercy, leaving devastation in their wake. My forces are formidable, but even I cannot deny the cost of prolonged conflict. Tell me, human, what would you do if faced with such an enemy?" Elena hesitated, her mind racing. This wasn't just another trial. It was a real crisis, one that threatened not only her own survival but the future of countless lives. She glanced down at her baby, whose wide eyes seemed to mirror the enormity of the situation. Then she looked back at the Queen, determination blazing in her expression. "I'd fight," she said firmly. "Not because I think we can win alone, but because giving up isn't an option. We'd find allies, unite people who share our values, and stand together until the very end." The Queen tilted her head slightly, intrigued. "And how would you inspire such unity? How would you convince others to join your cause?" Elena stepped closer, her voice rising with conviction. "By showing them what we're fighting for. By reminding them that love, hope, and connection are worth protecting, even if it means risking everything. People don't rally behind leaders who promise perfection, they follow those who remind them why life matters." Her words hung in the air, resonating far beyond the confines of the observation deck. The Queen's advisors shifted uneasily, some exchanging wary glances. To them, Elena's ideas sounded reckless, even foolish. But Vixarion remained silent, her multifaceted eyes fixed intently on the human woman. Then, without warning, the ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared throughout the flagship, and red lights flashed along the ceiling. A holographic display materialized above the viewport, showing a swarm of Ashari ships approaching rapidly. The battle had come to them. "Prepare for combat," Vixarion commanded, her voice sharp and commanding. She turned to Elena, her expression unreadable. "You claim unity is humanity's greatest strength. Prove it now, or watch as both our peoples fall." As the Queen departed to oversee the defense of her fleet, Elena found herself surrounded by a small group of human survivors who had been brought aboard during earlier raids. Among them were engineers, medics, and even a few children, all frightened, but determined to help. They looked to Elena for guidance, their trust unwavering. "We need to work together," Elena told them, her voice calm but urgent. "Everyone has a role to play. Some of us will repair damaged systems, others will tend to the wounded. Whatever happens, we stay united." Inspired by her words, the group sprang into action. An engineer named Marcus quickly devised a plan to reroute power to the ship's shields, while a medic named Priya organized makeshift trash stations. Even the children pitched in, using scraps to create tools and supplies. Together, they transformed panic into purpose, proving that humanity's strength truly lay in its ability to adapt and support one another. Meanwhile, the battle raged outside. The Ashari ships unleashed devastating barrages of energy weapons, tearing through the Xyranthian fleet with ruthless efficiency. Vixarian watched from the command center, her usual composure beginning to crack under the strain. For the first time in her long reign, she felt doubt creeping in. Was her logic failing her? Had she underestimated the Ashari's resolve? Back on the observation deck, Elena held her baby close as explosions rocked the ship. Through the viewport, she saw Xyranthian soldiers fighting valiantly, but also faltering under the relentless assault. In that moment, she realized something crucial. The Ashari weren't just attacking the Xyranthians. They were targeting the very idea of emotion itself. "If we lose this fight," Elena murmured to herself, "it won't just be the Xyranthians who suffer. Humanity will lose its chance to show the galaxy what we're capable of." Summoning every ounce of courage, she made a decision. Gathering the human survivors, she led them to the heart of the flagship, where a critical reactor core powered the entire vessel. With the Ashari closing in, Elena proposed a daring plan, one that would require sacrifice, teamwork, and faith in the impossible. As the humans worked tirelessly to implement her strategy, Queen Vixarian observed from afar, her doubts giving way to admiration. These fragile creatures weren't just surviving, they were thriving under pressure, forging connections and finding strength in each other. For the first time, she began to understand why humanity endured, but the battle was far from over. As the Ashari launched their final assault, Elena and her companions prepared to make their move, a desperate gambit that would either save both their peoples or doom them all. The flagship trembled violently as the Ashari fleet unleashed its final barrage. Energy weapons tore through the shields, leaving gaping holes in the hull and sending debris spiraling into space. Alarms screamed throughout the ship, their piercing wails a constant reminder of the chaos unfolding outside. Yet amidst the destruction, Elena stood firm, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. Her plan was risky, reckless, but it was the only chance they had. She and the human survivors had managed to access the reactor core, a massive chamber humming with raw energy that powered the entire vessel. Using Marcus's engineering expertise, they rigged the core to emit an electromagnetic pulse (MP), strong enough to disable the Ashari ship's advanced weaponry. But there was a catch. Triggering the EMP would also temporarily shut down the flagship's systems, leaving everyone aboard vulnerable for several critical minutes. "We can do this," Elena said, her voice steady despite the trembling floor beneath her feet. She looked around at the small group of humans gathered with her, Marcus, Priya, and the others, all of whom nodded in agreement. They knew the risks, but none of them hesitated. Together they worked feverishly, connecting wires and calibrating controls, their movements synchronized by sheer willpower and trust. From the command center, Queen Vixarian watched the unfolding scene through surveillance drones. Her mandibles twitched faintly as she observed the humans' efforts. Despite herself, she felt a flicker of admiration. These fragile creatures weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for something greater. Their unity, their willingness to sacrifice everything for each other, it defied logic. Yet it radiated undeniable strength. "Your Majesty," one of her advisors urged, his voice tinged with panic. "We must retreat before the Ashari overwhelm us." Vixarian silenced him with a sharp glance. "No," she said firmly. Not yet. As the EMP system came online, Elena turned to face the group. This is it, she said, her voice filled with emotion. When I activate the pulse, the ship will go dark. We'll have to rely on the Xyranthians to hold the line until we regain control, if we fail. She paused, glancing down at her baby, who gazed up at her with wide, trusting eyes. If we fail, then at least we tried, and that's what matters. Tears welled in Priya's eyes as she stepped forward to embrace Elena briefly. You've shown us what it means to fight, not just for ourselves, but for each other, she whispered. Whatever happens, thank you. Elena nodded, choking back her own tears. Then, taking a deep breath, she pressed the activation button. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, a brilliant flash of light erupted from the reactor core, spreading outward like a wave. The MP surged through the flagship and into the surrounding space, disabling every Ashari weapon within range. Outside, the once unstoppable fleet faltered, their ships adrift and powerless. Inside the flagship, however, all systems went dark. Emergency lights flickered weakly, casting eerie shadows across the corridors. The hum of the engines died, plunging the vessel into silence. For those tense moments, uncertainty gripped everyone aboard. Had the plan worked? Or had they doomed themselves? Queen Vixarian remained in the command center, her expression unreadable. Around her, her soldiers scrambled to restore power, their exoskeletons clicking softly as they moved. Through the viewport she could see the Ashari ships drifting helplessly, a testament to the humans' ingenuity. But the victory was bittersweet. Without functioning shields, the flagship was still vulnerable to collision or boarding parties. Then, slowly but surely, the ship's systems began to reboot. Lights flickered back on and the familiar hum of machinery returned. Cheers erupted from the human survivors, their voices echoing through the halls. Against all odds, they had succeeded, but the real breakthrough came when Vixarian made her way to the reactor chamber. There, she found Elena cradling her baby, surrounded by the exhausted but triumphant group of humans. Their faces were streaked with dirt and sweat, but their eyes shone with pride and hope. You did it, Vixarian said, her voice softer than anyone had ever heard it. You saved us. Elena looked up, meeting the Queen's gaze unflinchingly. We did it together, she corrected gently. Humanity doesn't win because we're stronger or smarter. We win because we stand by each other no matter what. The Queen's mandibles twitched again, this time with something resembling. Oh, for centuries she had ruled with cold logic, dismissing emotions as weaknesses. Yet here before her was living proof that emotions, the very things she had scorned, were humanity's greatest strength. I underestimated you, Vixarian admitted, her words carrying weight. And I was wrong. In that moment, something shifted not just within the Queen but across the entire empire. The humans' actions had proven that survival wasn't about eliminating chaos. It was about embracing connection, finding meaning in struggle, and holding on to hope even in the darkest times. As the flagship limped back towards Araction 7, the Queen issued a decree. Humanity would no longer be treated as inferior. Instead, they would be welcomed as an example to the galaxy of resilience, empathy, and unity. It was a bold decision, one that shocked her advisors and sparked whispers of rebellion among some factions. But Vixarian stood firm, her newfound understanding guiding her choices. For Elena and the human survivors, the journey was far from over. But as they gazed out at the stars, knowing they had changed the course of history, they couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. Humanity had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, not through force, but through heart. The aftermath of the battle left both humanity and the Xyranthian Empire forever changed. The flagship docked on Araction 7, its battered hull a testament to the fierce struggle that had taken place. As Elena stepped off the vessel with her baby in her arms, she was greeted not by hostility or indifference, but by something unexpected: respect. Queen Vixarian herself stood at the landing platform, flanked by her advisors, her towering figure exuding authority yet tempered with newfound humility. You have earned your place among the stars, the Queen declared, her voice carrying Across the gathered crowd, humans and Zarenthians alike turned their attention to the scene, some astonished, others inspired. Your actions have proven that strength is not found in logic alone, but in connection in the bonds you forge and the hope you inspire. Elena met the Queen's gaze, her heart swelling with emotion. She hadn't set out to change an empire. She had simply fought for what mattered most, to protect her child, her people, and the values that define them. Yet here she stood, a symbol of resilience and unity. Having altered the course of galactic history. In the days that followed, Queen Vixarian kept her word. Humanity was no longer viewed as inferior or expendable. Instead, they were recognized as equals partners in shaping the future of the galaxy. A new alliance was formed, one built not on dominance but on mutual understanding. Zarenthian engineers worked alongside human innovators, combining their strengths to rebuild damaged ships and fortify defenses against future threats. Medics from both species collaborated to heal the wounded, while teachers exchanged knowledge, bridging cultural gaps that had once seemed insurmountable. For Elena, life took on a rhythm she could never have imagined. She became an ambassador, of sorts, representing humanity's spirit to the wider galaxy. Her baby grew into a curious toddler, toddling through the crystalline halls of the palace, earning smiles even from the sternest of Zarenthian guards. The sight of such innocence thriving in an alien world served as a reminder of why they had fought so hard, and why they must continue to build bridges rather than walls. One evening, as the twin suns of Zaraction 7 dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of amber and violet, Elena found herself standing beside Queen Vixarian, on a balcony overlooking the sprawling cityscape. The Queen's demeanor had softened over time, her rigid logic giving way to moments of quiet contemplation. "Do you ever wonder?" Vixarian began, breaking the silence. "What drives beings like you to keep going, even when all seems lost?" Elena smiled faintly, shifting her sleeping baby in her arms. "Hope," she replied simply. "It's not always logical and it doesn't guarantee success. But it gives us something to hold on to, a reason to believe that tomorrow might be better than today." The Queen tilted her head, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the fading light. "Hope," she repeated softly, as if tasting the word for the first time. "Perhaps it is not so different from faith, the belief that there is meaning beyond what we can see," Elena nodded. "Maybe that's what makes us strong, not just humans, but all of us. When we care about each other, when we fight for something bigger than ourselves, we create a kind of magic. Call it love, call it unity, it's what keeps us alive." A rare smile flickered across Vexarian's angular features. "Magic," she mused. "An interesting concept. Perhaps I have much to learn from your kind." As the night deepened, the stars emerged one by one, dotting the heavens with their brilliance. Below, the city glimmered with bioluminescent flora, blending seamlessly with the glow of technology. It was a harmonious blend of nature and innovation, a reflection of the fragile yet enduring alliance. Now, taking root. Before leaving the balcony, Vixarian paused, turning back to Elena. "Tell me, human," she said, her tone lighter than usual, "if I were to ask again, would you still accept my offer of marriage?" Elena chuckled softly, shaking her head. "I think we've moved past that, Your Majesty. Besides, I'm already married to this little guy." She glanced down at her sleeping baby, her expression softening with love. The Queen clicked her mandibles in amusement. "Very well. Then let us settle for friendship instead, a bond forged not by obligation but by choice." With that, the two women parted ways, each returning to their respective roles, but forever connected by the shared journey they had endured. For Queen Vixarian, it marked the beginning of a new era, one where emotions were no longer dismissed as weaknesses, but celebrated as sources of strength. And for Elena, it was proof that humanity's greatest power lay not in weapons or technology, but in the unbreakable ties that bound them together. As the galaxy looked toward the future, one truth became clear. Humanity had proven itself not just as survivors, but as dreamers, builders, and believers. They had shown the cosmos that love, hope, and unity could overcome even the darkest storms. And in doing so, they reminded everyone, including themselves, that being human wasn't just about existing. It was about thriving with heart, courage, and an unwavering belief in the beauty of connection. Underneath the endless canopy of stars, a single phrase echoed silently through the void: humanity, heck yeah.